Assalamualaikum everyone, this is Mohammad Asif Raza here, and in today's video I have with me Mr. Terrell Turner all the way from United States of America. So first of all, thank you so much sir for managing your time for this interview, and it's a real pleasure to be with you and discussing about entrepreneurship. So kindly sir give a brief introduction about yourself so the audience may know you as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, as you said, my name is Terrell Turner. My background is accounting and finance. I've worked with major companies, some of the biggest companies in the world, worked with Wall Street analysts, and most recently worked with a tech company, helping them grow from, we were in the process of buying other companies, as well as also raising over $65 million in private equity funding to fund the growth of the business. And I've since left that role now. My business is working with entrepreneurs and small businesses, helping them navigate the financial side of building their business and really building something that's sustainable.
Well, that's very impressive of you, sir. So we will be proceeding with questions. The new students who want to start their new business, and then how can they start their new business with a new idea that has value in the market?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, really take a look at your own life and things that are challenges or problems for you, because a lot of the tech companies that I work with now, it all started from the founder was having a problem, they're having an issue with something, or something was just inconvenient. So they figured out how to use technology to start, creating a solution and creating something that other people were having a problem with. And I think if you start to look at your own life and you look at your own problems and things that are difficult for you, other people are probably having that same problem. And if you can build a solution for it, that could be a great start.
Well, there's a problem if you have that conflict between your passion and then what is in the need in the market. Then would you be going with your passion or would you be changing your career according to the need in the market?
I think we always have to be, sensitive to what the market demands, because one of the things that I tell people is, being in business, being an entrepreneur, being an entrepreneur myself and working with entrepreneurs is not so much about me following my passion, because, I can follow my passion, but if customers aren't willing to pay me for it, I won't be in business that long.
Yes, exactly.
So
Yes.
it's really about, finding a way to marry the two. And where I tell people is, what I try to find passion in is the process of solving the type of problem that I solve. Because if my focus is on solving the problem, then I know that I'll always have a demand for what I do. And if I find passion in that problem solving process, then I'll always have a business.
That's a very well point here. Is just so moving on to the next question is that how can we initially draw attention to a new product for our new business startup? Because it is very important to have a good first impression in the market. So how can we initially draw attention to our new product?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of ways that have definitely evolved from, I guess you say, the older, more harder way to do it. But I think that there's a lot of opportunities now, and a couple of things that I've done, even with some of my own products that I've released, is, working with people that are already in the market, whether that's incubators or and doing like free demos for them. Because, one of the things that it allows you to do if you're working with someone who already has a reputation in the market, it allows you to, partner on, or I guess you say, leverage their credibility to also bring credibility to what you're doing. So some of the things that I've done is, I've given, free speeches or free workshops at, different events and introduced the products that I had. And the people who already liked that organization that I was partnering with, in turn, they ended up liking me more, and it gave me a chance to introduce my product. And I also think creating content on, social media is thinking about, the problem itself that you're solving, and just talking about that problem, how much of a pain point it is for you or for other people. And then just telling them, hey, this is what we're doing to help solve that problem. And as you begin to demonstrate, hey, our solution actually solves this problem, it allows you to start building momentum for your release in the market.
Yes, exactly. Very well said, sir. So the next question, moving on to the next question. So next question is that if we have studied entrepreneurship as a course in our Bachelor's of Electrical Engineering, so we have studied about two techniques, two goal setting techniques, that are causation and effectuation. So as an entrepreneur, if you have to choose one technique, then which technique you would choose and why?
I would definitely say causation, because I do think that, when you go the route of effectuation, I think the challenge that you run into is where what I mean with effectuation, I mean, you have the means or you have a method and you're trying to make the end goal fit into your method. And
Yes,
I think when you're an
exactly.
entrepreneur, you're actually going into, I mean, you're trying to develop, you're trying to innovate. And I think it's probably better to think in reverse is, think about the end goal and then find the means that fit the end goal. Because if the end goal is to solve a problem that customers are willing to pay for, then it really comes, hey, have an open mind, because there could be a million ways for you to, or a million means for you to use or to find to actually achieve that end goal. And I think as long as you're focused on that end goal of solving a problem that customers are willing to pay for, you'll be prepared to innovate and you'll be able to prepare to pivot and adjust so that other competitors won't disrupt your business, your industry so much that it pushes you out of the market.
Well, there's a question arises right here that if you are looking at that end goal, then you can be, if you, for some reason, you can't be able to achieve that end goal, then would you be depressed or like, then what would you do? That's the question arises. Yes. What would be you doing if you
Yeah.
can't be able to achieve that goal? Yes.
Yeah, and that's why I think that, when I say the end goal, where I kind of, I guess you say, adjust it a little bit from what I've heard a lot of people when they talk about causation and effectuation. Like some people, when they talk about causation, the end goal is, I want to create product X. And what I tell them is, go a level higher. The real end goal is, I want to solve XYZ problem that people are having. Because when you focus on that, what it does is it gets you out of the mindset of, hey, I have to solve the problem with this product. No, it allows you to think more broader and say, hey, no, I have to solve this problem. Now, how I solve it, the method we use, it may be different. I mean, and I give a specific example, even for myself, when I started, creating a content show around like accounting and finance, like helping business owners. Like one of the approaches that I took at first was, I was creating kind of lecture style videos, and that was my goal, was to create a lecture style video, and it failed horribly. I mean, it did not go well. But when I took a step back and said, okay, what's my real goal that I'm trying to achieve? I'm trying to simplify and make accounting and finance less complicated for business owners. So when I started focusing on that instead of focusing on doing my lecture, it allowed me to open my mind to where I said, hey, you know what? How about I change the way that I create the videos? And that allowed me to have, tremendous success, to where we've done over 200, interviews and videos with CEOs and executives of companies around the world by just making that shift to where my real goal is, how do I solve the problem?
Well, that's very very impressive of you. It is. I guess you have done 200 interviews, or what is the exact number?
It is 233.
Well, that's a great. It's just my fifth or sixth interview, I guess. So I had to go a long way. Yes. So moving on to the next question, obviously. Well, the next question is what I consider is the most important question for this debate, because I think is that creating a business plan is very very important. So what aspects an entrepreneur should keep in mind while creating a business plan?
Yeah, I think the first thing in the business plan is, having clarity on the target market, because I do think a lot of times the business plan gets so focused on the product or what we're going to deliver. And one of the questions that I ask when I'm sitting with entrepreneurs, or I'm reviewing business plans, or I'm working with a angel investor or institutional investor, and we're trying to analyze a business. And one of the questions that, we often ask is, okay, all right, who is this business for? Like, what's the audience that you're solving a problem for? And whenever anyone says, well, we're solving a problem for anybody who, or, our audience is very broad, that begins a red flag. And even when I talk to a lot of investors, immediately they say when they hear that, that's a red flag. And they just kind of take a step back, because when it comes down to developing your business plan, a business plan that's not specific about who are you trying to reach, that's a business plan that ends up being one that's going to cost a ton of money, and the chances of success are very, very low. So I would say the first thing is, in your business plan, being very clear about who you are trying to reach and who this product is for. And the more specific, the better. And then the second thing in the business plan, I would say, is, thinking about, the financial side. And I sound a bit biased because that's my area, but I think you have to think about, when will this business actually become, cash flow positive? When will this business be able to fund itself? Because I tell everyone, cash truly is king when it comes to business. And just like chess, when the king is down, that means the game is over. So if you don't have a plan to get the cash flow positive, or you aren't already at cash flow positive, then you're probably not setting yourself up for success. So you want to think about that in the business plan, because I know a lot of people, when it comes to business plans, they think more about, well, what about the product and what about the potential market? It's like, no, let's be very specific about who the target audience is, and let's get very clear about how long will it take this business to start funding itself, because eventually you may run out of cash, or you may run out of investors willing to pour more money into your business. So you want to make sure, does this business make financial sense for me to actually launch it? If not, what do I need to change in my business model or my business plan to make this sense?
Okay, well, from your answer, I have another question for you. That obviously we need an initial investment for our startup. So initially, students, those who are studying in the universities, obviously, just like me. So I'm still 21. So what would you suggest to basically get that initial money for your startup?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I know here in the U.S. and even in some other countries where I've had guests on my show from countries around the world, one of the things that a lot of them have mentioned is there are a lot of incubators that you can join, where you can apply to become a part of the incubator. And the good thing about it is that you'll get a mentor through that incubator program. Plus, a lot of times they also pair you with, whether it's free grants to help you with your MVP one, or to get your, your first draft of your product developed, to where, there's funding available through some of these platforms. Another
Sorry to
method
interrupt you. Sorry to interrupt you. Well, these facilities are not available in all the countries. Like country I'm living in Pakistan here, it is not available, this facility. So what would we doing in this situation if this kind of facility is not? Yes, please.
Agree.
Yes.
Yeah. So a second one, a second method that I've seen people do is definitely using I guess you say, a kind of a bartering approach, where if you have a skill set, let's say if you're developing a tech product and you need investment, to where you can start to, whether it be freelance your services for helping other people build their business to generate the cash flow to fund your business. And that may be, hey, you trading your services for payment so that you can get things off the ground, or it could be you trading your services to help someone else in their business if they will give you an introduction to people who can invest in your business, because sometimes those relationships or the introduction is what you need to get access to the capital. And then I think the last thing what I've done in some cases is, and I've helped some businesses do, is pre-sell their product. where sometimes what they can do is, you can create a demo of the product of what you're doing, and you can introduce it to people, start to get feedback, and you can pre-sale access, let's say at a discount, because people are buying it early. And if they're buying the product early, they can give you you can actually earn some of the cash up front and then deliver the product so that you can then start to scale and take it even further. And, I will say to anyone that's in entrepreneurship and looking to fund their startup, it's not an easy process.
Yes, exactly.
It's not, it's not easy at all. But I think when it comes down to money and it comes down to funding ideas, one of the things I realize is that people will fund what they believe in. And if your focus can be on, hey, how do I get people to the point where they can believe in what I'm doing and they can start to see somewhat of a track record, then it allows you to be able to fund your business more. Like with that example of pre-selling some of your products. Even if you were able to pre-sell some of your product and then you go talk to an investor and say, hey, we have X number of units or X number of users already pre-sold, it makes it more interesting for them because they're like, wow, if you're already selling this, and I'm more excited about giving you money to keep it going because you've already sold some people on it.
Well, that's a very good point. So, moving on to the last question, that how can we stay connected with high-profile entrepreneurs for helping us in the startup? Because obviously we need help with for those people who have already done that kind of a business. So we have to be connected with those virtually as well as in person. So, what would you suggest about it?
Yeah, one of the things I always tell people is that, when they're trying to reach out to like high profile entrepreneurs, or they're like, hey, I saw this person in the news or whatever. And one of the things I tell them is that, the honest story is that, that high profile entrepreneur surrounded themselves around, like they have people around them or had people around them that actually helped them get it off the ground. So sometimes, it's actually helpful for you, maybe if you can't get to that high profile entrepreneur, but to start looking at who they have in their circle, like who they have in their connection, and start reaching out to some of those people. Or like I said, if you do have the privilege of being able to reach out to that high profile person, they may not necessarily have the time to give you all the answers you need, but you can always ask like, hey, who did you talk to? Or, hey, do you have anyone in your circle that's good at XYZ? And they may be able to refer you to someone. Because I tell people, it's like thinking about, with Steve Jobs with Apple. One of the things we know for sure is that Steve Jobs was not the creator of the product. If you were in the process of building a business and you wanted to talk to someone who's created a product, you wouldn't talk to Steve Jobs because he wouldn't be able to actually answer the questions that you need. And so I tell people, start thinking outside the box. I mean, if there are high profile people, start thinking about who's in their circle, who's around them, and who are some of those people you can talk to. The other thing that I tell people is, doing things like this. I mean, I think what you're doing is great as far as interviewing other people and giving them a chance to talk about, their journey, talk about their business, which it also gives you the opportunity to, get to know them and ask questions, and you can start to develop those relationships. And one of the things that I always tell people is whenever you meet someone and you're talking and you guys have a conversation about what you're doing, one of the last questions that I even always ask people is, hey, based on what I'm trying to do, is there anybody else that you think I should be introduced to? And can you give me an introduction? Because what they're going to do is that person is going to know other people that you probably should meet, but you don't know them yet, and you don't know that you need to meet them, but that person can help point that out to you and give you an introduction.
Well, there is another problem that not everyone is humble enough as you are. People don't respond because they have so many messages, because those who have so many followers will receive so many messages daily. So you have to get that effectiveness of message to reach out more people. Just like I reach out you, you replied to me, but not everyone replies. It's a very rare and it's very difficult to reach everyone in the world, around the world. So what would you suggest about communication of those messages, like building a network on LinkedIn, building more followers? What would be your technique? Because I'm still
Yeah,
like, yes, I'm like on 2K followers maybe, or less than that. So what would be your technique as a starter on LinkedIn? Yes.
Yeah, so one of the things that I did, I mean, because I went through that same experience of when I was starting my business off of, no one really knew who I was. And since I was so new at it, it wasn't like I can just go out and just say, hey, I want to meet so and so. There were a lot of messages that I sent out that people just didn't respond. And I think that's going to be part of the reality of your process. But one of the things that I started focusing on is I focused less on who wasn't responding and started focus on building more solid relationships with the people that were responding. And one of the things that that led to was me asking those people, like, I mean, I would say to make it a very real example, when I first started doing my show, I was struggling to get maybe do 3 interviews a week or something like that. And I was reaching out to a ton of people. And one of the things that I started doing is instead of like, trying to keep going that approach, what I did is I talked to people that I already knew and said, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. Do you know anybody that would be a good fit for this? And when they started introducing me to other people, I saw my effectiveness go up to where we got to the point where I was doing like, 12 interviews a week with high profile people because I was getting introductions by other people. And then I would say maybe about, 6 months into the process where a lot of people started seeing the quality of, my YouTube channel, the quality of, my show that I was doing, more people were willing because they're like, okay, I'm a little bit more familiar. I know that what he's doing is he's serious about it. So then more high profile people were interested to meet me. And where even to the point now where, some high profile people are actually, they have their PR agency reach out to me to try to get in touch with me about, being on the show and stuff like that. And I think you will have to go through a period of consistency to prove to other people that, you know what, I'm serious about this. This is something that's very real and I'm willing to put in the work to get good at this. And
Well,
when people start to see that, that's when they'll be willing to, open themselves up and be more generous.
yes, exactly. Consistency is the main thing. Yes. So that concludes our conversation. Thank you so much, sir. And is there any message you want to convey to the people back here in Pakistan at the end of this conversation?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I think that a lot of times people, look at, as I interview people from around the world, people look at, the situation in other countries and especially here in the US where like, it's much easier here in the US and in which, there are some advantages in other countries that don't exist in yours. But one of the things that I encourage people to do is to really dig in and look at, the opportunity that's right in front of you in your country and look at the opportunities that are around you and to maximize that because, a lot of times people feel like, they're competing against other major brands in the US. And even for myself being in the US, one of the things I had to realize is my competition is not, the other major brands. My goal and my focus has to be on who is my target audience and how do I help my target audience know that, hey, you guys are my primary focus. Because once my target audience started to feel like, hey, Terrell is really focused on us, that's when my success started to increase. So I would say to anyone in Pakistan, I mean, you have amazing opportunities. I mean, I think like, definitely continue. Listen to every episode on this show is a
Thank
great
you.
start. So
Thank you.
follow and
Thank you so much, sir.
subscribe to this channel.
Thank you so much, sir. And it's a real pleasure to be talking with you. It was a very good conversation with you.